Welcome to Miss Row Classroom. Today we'll be discussing the chapter, The Sermon at Benares. Please like, subscribe and share the video. While researching for this video, I was intrigued to trace the origins of this chapter and discovered something fascinating. In literature, we often rediscover stories, themes and ideas that were written long ago, reshaped through time. The chapter, The Sermon at Benares, is taken from Values and Voices, a college reader compiled in 1975 by Betty Renshaw. Interestingly, this text first appeared in The Monist, a quarterly magazine of philosophy, religion, science and sociology published in 1895. The Monist had reviewed The Gospel of Buddha by Paul Carus, released in 1894, from which the parable, the mustard seed, originates in ancient Buddhist literature from India. By studying this chapter, we are in fact rediscovering a story that has journeyed across countries, continents, and centuries, connecting modern readers to timeless Indian wisdom. The Sermon at Benares by Gautam Buddha teaches the truth of human suffering and mortality through the poignant story of Kisa Gautami. When her only son dies, Kisa Gautami goes from house to house seeking medicine to bring him back. The Buddha asks her to collect mustard seeds from a home where no one has died. She finds that death has touched every family and realizes that it is universal and unavoidable. Through her experience, she learns that grieving cannot restore the dead and that peace comes from accepting the truth of life's transience and freeing oneself from selfish attachment. Gautam Buddha was born as Prince Siddhartha Gautam in northern India. For the first 25 years of his life, he lived in luxury, protected from all sorrows. But one day, he encountered four sights: a sick man, an old man, a funeral procession, and a holy monk. These experiences made him realize that sickness, old age, and death are unavoidable parts of life, and that the only true peace lies in understanding and overcoming suffering. He left his royal life to seek truth, meditated under a peepal tree, and attained enlightenment. From that moment, he became known as the Buddha, the Enlightened One. His first sermon at Benares, on the banks of river Ganga, explained the nature of suffering, as illustrated through the story of Kisa Gautami. Kisa Gautami was a young mother whose only son had died. Heartbroken and unable to accept the truth, she went from house to house carrying the child's body, asking people for medicine to cure her dead son. She asked everyone for a medicine that could bring her child back to life, but she did not receive it because no one can cure death. The people pitied her and realized that her grief had made her lose her senses. She could not yet accept that death is final. Her desperate search reflects human denial of loss, the first stage of grief where one cannot yet understand the natural law of mortality. One kind man directed her to the Buddha, saying that only he could help her. When she approached him, she pleaded for the medicine to cure her child. The Buddha, understanding her sorrow, decided to teach her through experience rather than words. He told her to bring a handful of mustard seeds, but with one condition: the seeds must come from a house where no one has ever died. No child, husband, wife, parent, or friend. This time, she went from house to house again, asking not just for the mustard seeds, but also whether anyone in that household had died. She received plenty of mustard seeds, but in every home, someone had passed away. Thus, she did not find a single house free from death. Through this search, she began to see the universality of human suffering. As she sat by the roadside at dusk, Kisa Gautami watched the city lights flicker and go out one by one. She compared them to human lives, brief, fragile, and easily extinguished. She now understands that death is inevitable and touches every home. What she had failed to grasp before, that her suffering was not unique, became clear to her. She realized that all beings are bound by mortality. This deep understanding was precisely what the Buddha wanted her to discover, that grief lessens when one recognizes that death is a natural and universal truth. Kisa Gautami could not have understood this truth earlier because she was blinded by personal attachment and pain. At first, her sorrow made her believe that her child's death was an exceptional misfortune. Gautam Buddha's wisdom lay in guiding her gently towards self-realization. He did not simply tell her that everyone dies. Instead, he asked her to see it for herself by visiting many homes. Kisa's personal experience transformed her understanding. By confronting the shared pain of others, she learned compassion, acceptance, and wisdom. Her grief turned into insight, and she began her journey towards spiritual peace. The Enlightened One explained that life is full of suffering because it is impermanent. No one can escape death, just as ripe fruits must fall and earthen pots must break. Both the wise and the foolish are subject to death. He taught that death is inevitable for all beings. Weeping and lamentation cannot bring back the dead. They only cause more suffering. The wise accept this truth and therefore do not grieve excessively. True peace comes when one removes the arrow of sorrow and selfish attachment from the heart. Through calm acceptance and wisdom, one becomes free from suffering and attains inner peace. At the end of her journey, Kisa Gautami reflects, saying, "How selfish am I in my grief? Death is common to all." Typically, selfishness refers to prioritizing one's own interests or desires. But here, Kisa Gautami realizes that her selfishness lay in thinking her pain was greater or different from that of others. By clinging to her sorrow, she had isolated herself from the truth of shared human suffering. Realizing this was a crucial step in her spiritual awakening and transformation. Her words express self-awareness and spiritual awakening, understanding that only by letting go of personal attachment can one find peace and compassion for others. Let's move to the theme of the story. The theme of the story is the universality of suffering and the inevitability of death. Through the story of Kisa Gautami, the Enlightened One teaches that death is a natural part of life and that excessive grief only deepens one's sorrow. The excerpt highlights the impermanence or transience or ephemerality of human existence and the importance of accepting this truth with wisdom and calmness. The wise learn to accept impermanence and seek freedom from suffering through compassion and self-awareness. The sermon at Benares becomes not only a lesson in grief, but a universal message on life, death, and enlightenment. It also explores the idea that selfish attachment and ignorance are the roots of human misery, while understanding, compassion, and detachment lead to peace and spiritual enlightenment. Another important point from this chapter is the significance and relevance of the title. The sermon at Benares conveys a core dharmic philosophical truth that life is transient and impermanent, and that suffering arises from attachment and ignorance. True wisdom lies in accepting the impermanence of life and overcoming selfish grief. Gautam Buddha's teachings embody the middle path, which avoids the extremes of denial and despair by cultivating awareness, compassion, and balance. The story also reflects that life is full of suffering, and peace can be found only through understanding and inner detachment. The sermon encourages reflection on the nature of existence, mortality, and enlightenment, guiding young learners toward emotional maturity, spiritual insight, and harmony with the universal law of life and death. To summarize the explanation, the sermon at Benares is a timeless lesson on the reality of life and death. Through Kisa Gautami's experience, the Buddha teaches that grief and attachment only increase suffering, while understanding the fleetingness of life leads to peace. The sermon encourages people to accept loss as a natural part of existence and to cultivate compassion, wisdom, and balance. Its message remains deeply relevant today, reminding us that true strength lies not in denying sorrow but in facing it with calm awareness. The chapter thus inspires emotional maturity and spiritual growth in every individual. For more in-depth study, visit our reference website mistroclassroom.com for exam-oriented summaries, extract-based questions, extra questions, theme, character sketches, literary devices for Class 10. In the next session, we'll analyze the poem For Anne Gregory by William Butler Yeats. If you enjoyed the content, ask questions, subscribe, like, and share the video. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Bye-bye.